Todd Nauck is a fan-favorite comic book artist today, from his early work at Image in the 90s to his run on Young Justice at DC, but he's probably most famously known for his work on Spider-Man and X-Men at Marvel. And it's only fitting because those are the characters that brought him into the world of comics, like they did with so many other artists. But unlike those other artists, he was brought in not by the comic books, but by the cartoons. And ironically, one of the most obscure and underappreciated Spider-Man cartoons of them all. And I tracked down Todd at Comic-Con to get him to tell us that story himself, and it's coming up next. Hello heroes, 4K here with a spotlight on comic artist Todd Nauck and how he got into comics as well as his unique yet familiar art style. And of course it all started with Todd's love of superheroes, but that was not really sparked by the comics themselves, the source material, as much as it was the cartoons, specifically Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, which ran from 1981 to 1985 on NBC.
Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, Iceman and Firestar.
Yeah, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, that introduced me to the greater Marvel Universe and really inspired me to want to learn more about these characters, and that drove me to the comics. Actually, I rewatched when we first got Netflix a few years ago. They still had Amazing Spider-Man or Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends on there, and I rewatched the 3 X-Men episodes. Those were my favorite episodes because I loved the ideas of these heroes. First time I saw Colossus, Wolverine, Cyclops, I had to know more. And meeting the X-Men on that cartoon made me want to be a comic book reader because I knew that was the place I was going to get more X-Men. So those 3 episodes, definitely my favorites.
I had a similar experience to Todd. I was about a year or two younger than he was, and I was aware of Spider-Man and Marvel Comics and comic books as a medium, but it wasn't until Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends that it really kicked that passion into full gear. And yet, still, I loved cartoons and action-adventure cartoons. And so, even before Spider-Man, I would scan the TV guide looking for any instances of action cartoons that I could check out. So I was curious if Todd had a similar experience or if Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends was just a one-off for him. It turns out it wasn't.
Oh, yeah. Some, like Space Ghost, Herculoids, Thundar the Barbarian, the Hulk cartoon, the Spider-Man cartoon that later became Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, even the Filmation Fantastic Four cartoon were some of my favorites as a kid. And as a little kid growing up in the 70s and then junior high growing up into high schooler in the 80s, I was happy to get whatever I could.
That last comment really resonated for me. In today's streaming and downloadable culture, it may be hard to imagine just how hard it was to find action-adventure cartoons in those earlier days of television. For one thing, adventure cartoons have always taken a back seat to the funny talking animals cartoons. And when you did find some action cartoons, many of them were a little bit underwhelming, to put it diplomatically. So really, Spider-Friends was an oasis in the desert of early 80s cartoons, and I would argue that it had some of the best animation of the time, and also definitely some of the most sophisticated characterizations of adventure cartoons of the time as well.
The doctor said it's not serious.
But what if he's wrong? And I caused it. Just like before.
Before?
Haven't I ever told you how I became Spider-Man and why?
For example, in Spider-Man's origin story, the death of Uncle Ben was not the first cartoon to have a death in it, but the first to deal with the emotional repercussions in a serious way.
Are you Peter Parker?
Yes? What do you...
I've got bad news for you, son. Your uncle...
Uncle Ben? What's wrong? No, how?
It was a burglary. Your uncle woke up, surprised the burglar, and then...
No. My fault. All my fault. If only I'd stopped him when I could have, Uncle Ben would still be alive. I learned something important that night. I learned that with great power, there must also come great responsibility.
Oh, Peter.
Once, by not using my spider powers, I lost Uncle Ben. Now today, by using them, I might lose Aunt May. I'm ready to chuck it all and give up being Spider-Man.
Peter?
No way, buddy boy.
Yes.
No. What happened to that great lesson you learned?
Yes, with great power.
Comes great responsibility?
You mean I'm being tested all over again?
Spidey, you already know what the answer has to be.
Go for it.
In fact, producer Dennis Marks says that the network insisted that they take out Uncle Ben's death, and he refused to do it.
Well, there might have been script changes. Don't say this, or temper the language here. But that happens on everything. Again, it's the creative differences. And sometimes you really fight for what you believe in. And now there was, what was the one? Oh, yeah, we had a big meeting at NBC. I think it was the origin story, the origin of Spider-Man. And the psychiatrist or the guy, the doctor we had to talk to, didn't want the parents killed. I mean, it was something about that. I'm not 100%, but that's the way I seem to remember it. That it was going to be too traumatic and we said it's the origin of our guy, and it has to stay. And we were adamant about that. I mean, Stan was in the meeting. We were all in the meeting. And it came out that we won that one. As far as I can recall, it was the origin story. And there was something about it being too traumatic, have death. And we said, hey, this is the real story. And I'm trying to remember. That sounds like Batman. What am I talking about?
It was his Uncle Ben.
That's it. You got it.
Batman would eventually cover similar territory in his origin story with the death of his parents, but that wouldn't come out on TV for another 2 years.
You're coming with... This place. This place.
Batman! Scarecrow's getting away. Batman? Batman, are you okay? Batman!
So even though Batman had appeared in way more cartoons than Spider-Man, probably up to 100 more episodes, it was Spider-Friends that was actually the show breaking new ground in cartoons. Sure, Spider-Friends wasn't as sophisticated as superheroes were treated in the 90s, but it was pushing the medium forward in the 80s, laying the groundwork for even more sophisticated stories that would come later.